Anybody that isn't a Zionist would look at this and be like, yeah, this is terrorism by the Israeli government, a government that has been arming and funding these terrorist settlers to go to the West Bank and kill people or injure people and steal their land. And they're also protected by the IDF, who the United States did admit that they were committing human rights violations long before October 7th. Um, the response by Hamas and others is a response to the Israeli government massacring people, stealing land, and oppressing Palestinians. This is insane for anybody who claims these people aren't terrorists to say they aren't terrorists. Because if it was any other group doing this to Israelis, they would automatically be labeled as terrorists by the United States. But the United States doesn't care because it's the Israeli government, and most of our leaders are religious nuts Zionists.
This is what remains of the Palestinian town of Jit in the West Bank. It's a war, Ibrahim Shadi says. Dozens of armored Israeli settlers set homes and cars on fire, leaving at least one Palestinian dead. It must have been terrifying for the Palestinians living here, with Israeli mobs firing bullets and tear gas.
After the sunset prayers, I was sitting on my balcony with some guests, and suddenly we heard a blast and we saw fire. We found fire coming up from those two cars, so we started running, and we opened the gate to come fight the flames. When they saw us coming, they fled. The first batch was around 10 people.
It is organized state terrorism, the Palestinian Foreign Ministry says. Israel's President Isaac Herzog condemned the assault, and so did the White House, calling the attack unacceptable. But it's too little, too late. The
If the president of Israel truly was against this, why is he okay with the settlers being armed and protected by the Israeli government and protected by the IDF? And if the United States was really against this, why aren't they sanctioning the Israeli government for terrorism? They won't ever, because our presidents are always a religious nut Zionist.
Palestinian Wall and Settlement Resistance Committee reports over 270 fires the Israeli army and settlers have ignited since the war on Gaza erupted. Emboldened settlers, backed by the army, are clearly seizing the moment to intensify their attacks on Palestinians to drive them out from their land.
And a lot of these terrorists like to use October 7th as a justification for taking lands in the bank, which honestly doesn't make any sense. Or they want to act like Nazis and scream how these people are animals and how God chose them to own these lands. The Nazis also said they were chosen by God to own as much land as possible, and that anybody on uh, German land were just terrorists and squatters and stuff, and that justified the Nazis and killing people. The settlers are just religious fanatics who think they can use God as their justification.
We need to understand who is responsible for these crimes. It is the Israeli government itself, the government that distributed hundreds of thousands of rifles and arms to the Israeli terrorist settlers who are acting in such inhumane way, attacking the Palestinian villages, maybe on daily basis, setting fire to their properties and their homes, and in certain cases killing them, just like what happened in the village of Jet.
Israeli settlers.
And again, if this was happening to Israelis in Israel, where Palestinians or anyone else coming into Israel, killing and attacking Israelis and taking their land, the Israeli government and the United States would be screaming genocide or terrorist attacks. But because it's the Israeli government doing it, the Israeli government funding and supporting these people, it's a-okay to the United States. It shows how the United States picks and favors certain groups of people, claiming some are terrorists while others are not terrorists, even though the people that they're supposedly allied with are terrorists and also killing Americans.
Crimes are going unpunished. The purpose behind such an escalation is to make life for Palestinians in the West Bank so unbearable they pack up and move on, even though this is their home. Bassam Bunani World.
And the Israeli government can't continually claim that they're following international law when they're arming and funding terrorists to kill Palestinians when that is against